no guha na tumobit para i departamento. Zagi 4 na asunto na iginagaw mamami na para dangin sinya manaya ihibaw-dan komunikasyon sa importante at suka imanggasongta siya no federat sa ipan panmono na isaro na wa komunikasyon. Sa ini dangin sinya. Sabay unay amzo na i-figura na itantus kwantinisita para eno siya. Segundo na i-posisyon izidos na usangan. Naloki bandan gasolina na sa 16 na tumobit.
Chairman, can I just interrupt the two positions? He's talking the acting. Is it there or is it not? Oh, so that's not in question, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, pues tamana eleko na karitan mami no suficiente kareta para ugaha didi no masyagi mas ebaba na eskalera na sa nisaro na nagwahadzie no. Pues otro no na ugagago atensyon mizo zangin sinya ta atanfan Rota Loco Law 21-03 gizazi tractor purchase na igwaha tetinan salapi kulang 11,000 pesos na sinya ta zangin fanan gi masanganeo ni saro mamenda no nalay na zangin sinya ta bisyon alikutura gwaha dos tractor niya law gwaha di defecto musino lami gay sa gwaha nuibo mafahan law esta gay defecto zina tractor gi magang no gi damper clutch kus necesaro funny nuibo na no parts para azo na tractor.
There's no warranty on the tractor?
Sigon gi masanganeo no esta kao inipus no padzangin tumaza pinmiso na za mapatsa no tinina tiu fatsotso tinina efektibo i-warranty. Pues ini atan fan no zangin sinya ta sino gi-dispose kay mano na ugwa manera na pata amenda no nalay za titina na salapi gi sinya ben nasenbi para operasyon equipment services gibandan serbisyo para serbisyo na lado para siya para sumenterero. Pues ini 4 na asunto no naisinya mas man matsutsam. Pues may lapago sa bainamzo no ingagagaw gi para operasyon no ibo na sakan na fiscal na sakan no ala kwenta sinya man lalam 55,197 55,197 para todidos komunikasyon zan gasolina. Dan umalom diso geno gibanda ni gasolina. Ini para enteramente fisika na nasakan. Eno ginagaw mama misinya inagwa serbisyo gi mas ebaba para itawto. O comprende kabalis na no makat na sitwasyon tapago za si debio mapatin maulik o mainan maulik za hamzo na gaygi paloy fuetsa na isinya in ajuda este na departamento. Mas informasyon no gipresenti guaha 48 man marehistra no lansero nisi man mananong tinanong guaha 31 nisi man mamumugsay gaga guaka baboy manok pues necesaryo na ta nanalo tati ajudo serbisyo para sumentereron luta sa iningi pati gi segundo na industriya no ni mas 4 kilo para itanota pues sige atasozo itaw-tawta na fan mananom fan mamoksay law waha fatanya makineriya siya waha makiniria gi presenti law elekta no waha no problema niya zanisita ta Koreano gi monisia na sinadi pues ene iloko lo nagazangin sinya ta aligo manera empeño ne pata na serbeno na salapi no sinya gua mas alivio para el departamento. Pues sin más, no, listo pa bay OP, nangengwa cuestionamiento na, pud i-programa siya dyan departamento. Si Zeus Masi, pud i-prebilaw.
Thank you. Do you know how much is in the local law? You said that's 2103, right?
Yeah, hold on. $11,245.17. Dan loki malaga zo bay na fan manungam zo nagwa revolving account dos. If you song wildlife, you just say permits na. Zan otro i-apas i-tractor para serbisyo. Pues gi presente gi as of no August 8 para i-fish and wildlife $5.60. Kaya ito no binahan niya. Pago para equipment services $3.17. Ini balansa kay gigi revolving account.
Do you know how much in a year Fish and Wildlife collects?
Tio goftungo law comprende ka balis na durante ni hunting season ejige na mas 3 kilo ini rikoy.
What about equipment services?
Mas gitempon maipi, tempon no anglo.
But do you know how much they collect in a year?
Kulang duda zo tazay no. Sa guahasya bilan niya na ipago subanterero na ziling niya maagang no tilt na mapuno ay sagon na amot roundup no herbicide. Zatyo ti nisisita seso makiniriya.
How many equipments do you rent out total right now that are in
Dos
operation? Two?
Pues, yeah. Uno pago na matsususo eje nuevo no majulang ni saro found parts.
That's a tractor?
Eje John Deere na tractor. Bago di otro na Massey, eje kalalamting lombisado seso no majulang.
What about disking? You do?
I-harrow na implement i-tractor itself. I-implement wa siya ni sita.
Like an attachment.
Yeah, implement. Unwa. Giza na tionaso na ginin hamzo no in Tregam no 35 mil no 35,000. Na paro inajuda fineni na salapi na sa timunaw.
Because I know I think we added one. One I think was purchased through local appropriation. The other one was included in fiscal year 21 budget, maybe. Do you know if that was ever purchased?
Tigof siguro lo gi-presente na gi hulo giza ginalangan na substation no. Uno ana nuevo. Dan i-bio na.
How much is do you know how much is what's the rate of the rental?
$12 per hour.
For
any service para no disking na zan afazi mowing.
Who pays for the fuel?
Di departamento.
So you take the $12 and you pay for the
Inagay
basically.
tiginaga na lo estaba 8 pesos pues mahat solo está 12 pesos.
Can you increase the rate by regulation or it has to be through statute? Do you know?
Nisita kasi tamenda gi regulasyon
So it's an internal. So it's something that has to be proposed by maybe the RD or.
Correct.
Okay.
Unggan una an operator. Gwa gini gi FY no 23 na. Lo tima budget. Lo muna usasangan na i-kondisyon na atan pago na. Tay mano na patafan lala. So pwede gi otro na sakan na fiscal na sakan. Gwa mas alibyo sa tafan hogo. No sinya bay gago no ininesista ilangit no na no necesidad zagay gi agweno gi afem popopo ni siya na necesidad mom gi para 5 na division lao considera necesidad otro loke na nistigi realidad isti tafafana ti mannaungit financiar na ipataw pera kabalis napatanagwa pronto na serbisyo pay publiko. Tapos debita zutir papa tana ebaba hafa necesidad ta.
Pues ven a claro, stige 55 mit. Communications and if you at the minimum. No?
Sinya by now breakdown gi kada no division na lo ini. Okay, mela sabi na kla. I komunikasyon no 4,316 pesos. Okay? Posititenan niya para no gasolina dan diso. Dumada na gasolina dan diso. Sinya inoperam na no. Inisisita mas. Dahil ini babae no sa kulang 10 galon no gikada si mana. Na kulang marasyo no 10 galon na ino na pon opero. Ini na breakdown. Neman matom yan. Ikada kareta 10 galon gisi mana.
Pues
para ugwadi di servisyo.
Este dos na position ni un sangan earlier está malofan administrative officer 3 and forestry 1.
Forestry technician 1 no está mautsum no.
Está mautsum.
Julio 25 administrative officer 3 po mautsum gini na mes gi 21. Agosto 21 po mautsum.
What about heavy equipment foreman 1? Did you open that? Is that open or?
Makinista no giza ko no loti ma budget na. Izige na pas pareho as an operator mas inisisita operator sa uno an operator gi presente na. Logi
No, but the operator is a new request.
Nuevo for no vacancy na.
Foreman 1 was previously filled and then it became vacant. Right? So the funding should still be there, or it's not? You're saying it's not there, the funding for that?
Yeah, that's a promotion. He's got promoted.
Yeah.
Mm.
The additional operator is not in the 12? No. Is that in the 12? It's a new request.
New request.
Yeah.
So it's not there. No.
Dos na bakante na gi division agriculture.
Do you know where it's at in the routing process?
According to the mommy no HR no gaygi uno ista gaygi gi open.
So it went through OMB already? Or not yet?
Not yet.
And AO3 is closing.
Closing 21 na. August 21st, mautsum.
So you're gonna have a little less than a month to route that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if there's been any discussion with DPL to possibly partially fund Parks and Recs employee? Like how there's an MOU between Parks and Recs, Saipan, and DPL?
There was never any taza ano na madiskuti na. No, sinya.
I think that's a discussion that should be had. Again, the agreement between Saipan, Parks and Recs, and DPL is that they'll bill DPL for some of the services that Parks and Recs provides to maintain some of these public lands. And so maybe that's a discussion and another agreement that maybe Rota, TLNR can have with DPL to see if half, I think it's 50% on Saipan. So I think also provide that opportunity for Rota, TLNR to avail or provide 50% of their services to DPL. That way that could free up whatever 50% of your personnel budget is for operations.
Mali keno na that toma pa diset ko sa kisinya ma-extendi mo gino lo taza ne gikinimprende ko taza ne madiskute no lo si Jesus Mosi na informasyon sa sinya angin abiragi tati director na no tazotti neno na no.
Any other members?
Director, no tanisita no na operator gini na imamela alis kudikat no. Sa malago do na by
Sagi sumunig ano na sa jangin uno operator za ma-repair ji no ibu na tractor sa pre taza posinigo ni ji otro na tractor na za dos na tractor za uno an operator. So we need no por lo menos uno talo na.
Inan siya, mega na basis na gone managang na lansero za paro mamamay sin serbisyo lo masangani na nangga sa no tiger operator, mulifi operator. Pues kasi nag-raise no sa credit card na lo tema na considerira sitwasyon na no inatan gi realidad na nabanda na sinya gi otro na physical na sakan na no padiotronia na sinya mas angin mas gua manhogungin na ito na sinya ta nafan kumplido todo hafa preciso no ginagauta lo zangin ulad no
Ay pare
no insena gradese no
Jaffa gi bandan repair no
equipment services na gaigi ma dadang kolonya na sa puro siya no basta ki makineria za zangin gua mazulang no sige nagigi gagawin niya
so pera deji nebo na tractor off outro na equipment neji si Rosa na debi ma repair za
no agwinan mommy lo tibula ji no ti komplikao this harrow na gagi sa bula siya gi no untulalay ka sa anistane man no afazi man no fatso disiton tulay ka siya bearings gentalo sige nagagi mas imantikan salapi na pues gi repairs equipment services nagagi mas
lo ja kwanto no mon balinya
ti gusto ngo klaro gi kada uno na lo sige nagagi pues kanay kaulo siya gi
afaza magang yan no
this harrow implement actual implement
so unsakan na gua 11,000 tetenan gini bentig alami probably lo 2103 so may sino na ben aligaw za bensonic para operasyon mizu para na-regulate siya lo question no ko naong benti pero ninafalogo nene 11,000 but gua
afazi estimate quotation sa gi edzo na na tractor no out of Europe parts pus ko lang idon mami HR no so gi didi na afazi no research no dan pus ko lang let's say sinya menos no 25 mit kin todo fleti na lo otro na necesidad para diso pat no otro na tractor sa amcos ta otro na tractor masi pues eso na no kumay problema no sumi hydraulic no fuel todo siya gaskets dan no nisaro sesu fan matulay ka
thank you
Jesus mas buen provecho
All right. Just several things, and we'll request a fund status for that Rota Local Law 2103, and then we'll communicate with Rep. Julie to get that introduced in the House so that we can expedite that reappropriation. Additionally, if you can mention to your director to begin that discussion with DPL. And then if he needs further assistance, we'll come in and assist however way we can. Also, going back to the revolving fund, I mean, at $12 an hour, 1 gallon is already $7, and that's just gasoline. I'm not sure how much diesel costs right now.
$9.92.
Yeah, and so I think there has to be that plan to increase it if that needs to be the case, because otherwise it's going to be dipping into your operational expense. And so see if that's something that would need to be changed by statute, and then we'll get that started. But if it's something through regulation, then that's something that can be discussed with the secretary.
Director, malagazu ba chulistin na oportunidad na sa attendee meeting di paingi the oil and water. Za uno na preciso para ufan mafondo siya project gi pailansero na i paufan active no i organisasyon tegi sesti regmono gua 31 na rancher sa kaso zan uso como mandanya unay za man organisasyon sinya mas man manoy fondo na NRCS awero aneno no manamsa pues gonna be ne como timan active na sa mamay sinofa na tagimon tinyang gua slaughterhouse pues iringnya na conductor na irason sa man active lancero siya za masangan ofan incident niya na sa zanggin uno dosa kumikwintus ti priority siyempre na pues ko atang fa neno temano na ipata angin magawid na gwa 31 neno siya zan gwa 48 na lancero na sa pareha mensiona pudisti CUC na tinisara no mege na salapi tagasta gwa honum manimalaka gini ni matanonum uzang gitasi pues sinya rukit tafan mamon 1 million gallon water tank mapundo nesti na group na 1 million gallon water tank mapega sila Paulo za gini ni ejo man mahaloji di batti honum ni lancero na ejo na lugat pues down the road sinya talo tu lugat na jiji water tank na but stand pipe za ejo no ma chlorinate gi after ladero no pareno pues kulang isa matter of bata tunga natin si Chomo si sa debi non-profit but often na grupo na siya ufandanya sa magawid na 48 man ma-register na lancero pues lani siya siya mandanya sa midgood boss niya na ufan manggago grand tanagwa dibat din na ono pa lancero pare ginin matanono para kaan na majuti aji na CUC siya di tatsuli za tanaw siya na lancero za o manasidbi na pipe honum para pastay pat no tahala papa data na sedbi di badya sa maliling molika tiban susublay honum lo mimilalaka na no kus kulangan yung sangon ni nisti kulang niku gwa kampo para ta paisinin siya do fan danya za bula siya pero grand na siya ta juday lancero na no tractor por ejemplo
para informasyon ma no seneta na ilutas ang Water Conservation District maagon formatal pues esta pago man aktibo sta membro noibo siya na membro manggayigit pues sige na NRCS na USD no afazi no man masususo zan Zota District in pues gwa siya man maatan siya no oportunidad na para mas no asistimenton sa lapi mao gigini islata pues estaba na no
often meeting often isidan niya no
dinansi
no para isang na
Thank you, Senator Mangonia. And so, thank you for your presentation today, Mr. Mangonia, and also providing the members with a detailed description of your requests. If there's anything else that was not discussed or mentioned in this report prior to passage of a product, please feel free to reach out to the committee. But at this time, I think there were several recommendations that were made, and if that's something that DLNR can look into, and we will assist in any way we can should you be unsuccessful in trying to get these additional support. Okay. If there's anything else you'd like to add prior to being excused?
Suportasyon mizo na na pagkonsidera na departamenton mami sa todo sita tumungo na departamenton no za natural na nagwina ko lang gigi mas za papapa agi eskalera pues mimigay niya na basis na ti mananay na todo ginagawa niya pues como sinya na in suli no na pega gi essential za masya in nayam masya ti todo la unos cuantos gi necesidad mo.
Thank you. And at the very least, we'll try to protect the FTEs in addition to the ones that are currently being processed. And so at this time, I'd like to thank you for your presence here today, and you are hereby excused.
Okay. Jesus mas.
Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute recess to give DPS the opportunity to settle in. We now rise back from recess, and up next we have the DPS. Under the budget personnel, 1,257,551. Governor had proposed 1,399,566. So that is an increase. This may have been that a 90% work period was earlier calculated. However, this figure that the governor proposed included all for police personnel to be reinstated to 100%, with the exception of administrative staff. Department is requesting for 70,000 in repair and maintenance, 80,000 in personnel training, 50,000 for communications, travel expenses at 120,000, operational supplies at 125K, fuel at 150K, buildings and improvements 60 and 70, among other things. And so before we proceed with questions, I'd like to hand the floor over to our acting director and maybe share if there's any discrepancy between what is in the budget and what's currently being allocated to DPS. And so at this time, I'd like to hand the floor over.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Senators. For the record, my name is Captain Jared T. Manglogia. I'm currently the Acting Director for the Department of Public Safety. With me today is Captain Noel Calvo. He is the Special Operations Commander for the department as well. We cannot sit here in confidence and say that the proposed budget from the governor is not only acceptable, it's not even feasible. I mean, if you look at the proposal, other than wages and salaries and Medicare 401 and the OPA fee, everything else has been zeroed out, basically. Yes, the director has submitted in what we consider a reasonable amount for our budget this year, for the upcoming fiscal year. We are looking at how to effectively provide public safety services to our community on the island, right? With that, we need fuel to operate our vehicles. We need to maintain those vehicles. We need to upgrade certain vehicles that we have. We need to train our personnel the consistently changing challenges of today's law enforcement environment. And then we have to meet our constitutional mandates in regards to the livelihood of our detainees who we come across in our line of work. We cannot just arrest them and not feed them, arrest them and not take care of their natural needs, such as using the restroom. That's why we requested for operational supplies, right? You notice we requested a meager amount of $1,500 for food items. That's not for my officers. That's not for our staff. It's for the detainees that we arrest. We have to feed these guys when we arrest them. Travel expenses. It may seem exorbitant, $120,000. But if you look at the amount of times we have to transport an arrestee, then the training costs. Because if we don't train, we don't stay up to date. If we don't stay up to date, what happens? We get into a lawsuit with civilians. That's America's #1 pastime now. It's no longer baseball. It's legal lawsuits, right? If we don't maintain proficiency and our knowledge, right, we won't be able to meet today's challenges. That's where you get the dumb cop mentality. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it's true. Officers get labeled dumb cops because they don't know what they're doing nowadays. You open up YouTube, look at it, right? Because they're not properly trained. They're not properly being maintained. What happens when we submit a funding request for training? That's one of the first things they take out, right? I'm not going to sit here today and beg you to grant us everything we're looking at. I'm going to go scorched earth theory because looking at the proposal, that's what it is. Everything's zeroed out. We're going scorched earth. So I'm going to give you what we basically need at the bare minimum just to operate, to be reactive. And I hate to say that, dear senators. I hate saying my officers are going to be reactive. We should never be reactive in law enforcement. Okay? But looking at this proposal, that's what it's suggesting. Okay? That rather than going out there and deterring crime, we'll just wait for it to happen and then send our officers to react to it. Is that something we want for our community? I think not. I don't think your constituents put you in the place that you are to allow us to be that way. You yourself would hold us to higher standards, just like we hold our officers to higher standards. We expect them to be readily available, properly trained, and properly equipped to respond and service our community. If we're not given at least fuel, how are we going to get out there? Now, we've been doing a pretty good job over the past year on improving our physical fitness at the department, but I highly doubt that my officers will be able to run from the village to Sinapalu in time to stop a crime from happening, to stop a burglary in progress call without fuel for their cars. Okay? Our boat. Past few budget hearings we've had with the House and also with the Senate, our director has brought up the need for improvement on our boat capabilities, a new engine. The current engine that is that's supplying that boat horsepower is not sufficient for that size of boat. Aside from that, it's malfunctioning. They recently had to respond out to a group of illegal immigrants, and then on their way back on that search, one engine died out. Now, do you think that's safe for the responding officers? Imagine if that was a distress call. How would we rescue people out there if the rescuers need rescuing themselves? Luckily, they were able to make it in. But I digress. Let me not sit here and worry you with all our problems. Let me just get straight to the nitty-gritty and let you know what we need. First and foremost, our priority is fuel. Like I said earlier, we can't go out there and respond to calls for service without fueling our vehicles. We have 15 operational vehicles right now that services each section in the department: patrol, highway patrol, boating safety, criminal investigation, intelligence, and school resource. We have 2 vehicles assigned to admin. Right now, correction, 1 boat and 1 recently obtained jet ski. The boat and the jet ski itself should be self-explanatory. Those vessels need fuel in order to respond. We don't take those out on joyrides. When we take those out, it's strictly for response. The vehicles. Patrol currently has 3 terrains that are working, that are functioning. These 3 vehicles operate 24/7. Right? We have 4 shifts sharing 3 vehicles. Now that means that 1 vehicle there at any given time is running 16 hours minimum. That requires fuel. Highway patrol, we have 1 Tundra, 1 Charger. We're fortunate that we're receiving federal funds from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. However, that's only 50% reimbursement for fuel. Okay. Criminal investigation, we were fortunate last administration to be able to procure one new Tacoma to help in investigation, and we utilize local funds for one Terrain. Both vehicles are still currently functioning. Boating safety has three trucks assigned to them. Two of those trucks are not really feasible, but we're stretching our resources as much as possible. We're putting Band-Aid solutions to ensure that we have them at least an extra month. When that month comes up, we put on another Band-Aid to fix it up. It out so much, it's like our favorite pair of underwear, where you stretch it out to the point that it's no longer elastic. It's just sagging down. So the already had requested 150,000 for fuel. That may seem like a lot, so I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Let's say we'll bring it down as much as $5,000 a month. That brings us to $60,000 for 12 months, 1 year, correct? Even with that, we're reactionary. $5,000 a month for fuel for 15 vehicles? That's us being reactionary, not being proactive, not being deterrent out there. Okay? We're going scorched earth, but we'll settle with $60,000 and we'll try and make it work. We'll stretch out the band of this underwear as much as we can. Communications. We have requested 50,000. If you look at our 2021 actual and our 2022 actual, it's around $2,000. Right? However, those were before we were able to arm our officers with cellular phones. We don't have working radios on the island. DPS and fire's radios are basically non-functioning. The radios that we do have in place, batteries are draining out within 30 minutes. Antennas are breaking down due to the amount of time we've had them. The service itself, pretty much once you pass Pinatang, you're not going to get service. You'll be lucky if you get service in Sunapalo, and that's only on good weather days. So we rely on our cell phones. We arm each shift with one cell phone, and each section has at least one commander with a cell phone on it, so we can get in touch with each other. We have phone lines assigned to each section, mostly each section, with dedicated internet. Now, we dedicate internet to our sections because we're trying to go green. If you notice, everybody's trying to request so much for office supplies. We're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to go paperless. We've managed it to the point where most of our police reports, our documents are all available to an officer on their cell phone or on their computer. So that way we save on cost for paper. We're trying to go green as much as possible. If I could get solar panels installed at our station, we would. So it'll minimize our cost for power, right? But we need communication. Right now, we're experiencing interruptions in our 911 and our main line. Just Monday night, I had to call up DPS Saipan and talk to the commander on shift and went down for 18 minutes. Now, I don't know if that was because we're behind in our bills or if it was because of the weather, but we had to alert Saipan that our phone lines are down. And if for some reason our community calls them up, call me on my personal cell phone so that I can dispatch my guys. That's what we're doing now. Personal cell phones, my officers. Police officer ones using their personal cell phone, using their personal money to gas the car sometimes. Just to go out there and do the job that they're mandated to do. Communications, 50,000, we could probably cut that down. But we do need communications. Repairs and maintenance, the director requested 70,000. If you look at our actual in 2022, that's around 19,000. We could probably work with that number. Like I said, I have 15 working vehicles, but I haven't told you the number of non-working vehicles that I have on the sidelines. 3 brand new Terrains came in. They were down within a period of 6 months. It wasn't my officer's fault. It's just we were dealt a bad hand by the factory or by GSA. And then I need to maintain these cars. Like I said earlier, at any given moment, I have one or two patrol cars operating 16 hours a day. That ups their mileage. We're not like a regular civilian car where it's going to take you on Rota maybe 3-4 months to service your vehicle. We need to service our cars almost every month and a half on average. So that's where our repairs and maintenance costs come in. Travel expenses. We could cut down on training. We'll go to the University of YouTube if we have to and train our officers that way. If we have to rely on our state partners and our neighboring islands to come in and give us training, we'll beg, borrow, and steal that way, right? But at least provide some funding so that we can transport detainees from here to Saipan. Our detention facility is not feasible to hold them more than 72 hours. This past year, we've had to beg the commissioner's office. Luckily, they were gracious enough to assist us in providing those funds to transport our officers plus our detainee up, just to meet our constitutional mandate. Operational supplies, excuse me, that covers items such as uniforms, equipment. We were fortunate last year that we received ARPA funding, and we used a bulk of that funding to purchase uniform and equipment. So I could say we could cut that down a lot this year. But eventually we're going to have to revisit it because uniforms wear and tear. Officers' bodies changes, hopefully for the better, right? So hopefully we won't need any more 3XL uniforms, and that'll cut costs. But I still need to properly equip them with holsters, pepper spray, batons, handcuffs. We live in a tropical environment, which means the handcuffs we have, which are made out of metal, are exposed to salt water. They rust. Imagine putting a rusty handcuff on a detainee. They'll complain. They'll make a civil lawsuit out of it. So we want to avoid those by properly equipping our officers. This $125,000 doesn't even cover the cost for radios. Each radio unit, when we were quoted, was around $1,400. I have 41 officers. Food items, 1,500. Let's cut it down, I guess, to 700. And we'll try not to arrest as many people this year, maybe, if that's the case. But it's gotten to the point where my officers, my captain, myself, we're the one feeding the detainee with our personal money because we want to maintain our constitutional mandate that when we detain them, we feed them, we take care of them, right? They're not slaves or uncivilized people. They're not animals. We have to treat them like humans. And most of the time, what tends to happen is, oh, there's no funding to get food for the detainee. So we fork it out ourselves. And we can't just use the officer's bento, because what if they have a dietary restriction, right? The food that's provided to that detainee must meet some nutrition standards. We cannot just give them the chicken adobo that the wife made from home for the shift that night. Technology and equipment, we could go without computers, I guess, for the next year. We'll make do with what we have. Like I said, we're pretty good at bandaging our stuff, right? But our biggest thing is fuel, communication, travel, and repairs and maintenance. Now, if you could somehow magically find funding to help us procure a new engine for our boat, that would greatly aid us. So that way I don't worry when my officers go out on the boat for a search and rescue operation. He doesn't worry about the officers directly underneath him when they're out there doing a grid search for a lost vessel. Communication-wise, we can make do if we continue to work the way we're doing right now. It's a band-aid solution, but it's all we have. Like I said, we're going scorched surf. Now, if for somehow, some way you find an extra $1 million hiding underneath a rock, think about our communication system for the island. Because it's not just this department. Our brothers and sisters in red at DFEMS needs that communication as well. If they fail to communicate with the hospital or with us, we could lose a life, and that's the last thing we want. We're glad that the governor's proposal sort of brings us back to a 100% funding for wages and salaries, but everything else, we need fuel, we need repairs and maintenance, we need travel costs. We may not need 120,000 for travel, but we need some funding to get our detainees up, to get our officers trained. Okay. I guess I'll yield my time to any questions you may have, because if we're gonna sit here and spew back and forth about what the department needs, we'll be here till tomorrow morning.
Thank you for going in detail as to each request that you've made. However, I do want to point out several opportunities in which whether it be the RD or someone at your department can access to address some of the concerns that you brought up. As I mentioned in the earlier department, that there's MAP and TAP grants. I don't know if DPS has ever submitted any grant proposal for that. OIA has been very accommodating in trying to take care of public service. I mean, in order to protect and to protect our people, but also to address some of the infrastructure concerns for each agencies. We've seen a lot of requests that comes through our office. A lot of times we get requests to provide support for these grant opportunities. And I have to say, I've never seen one coming out of DPS. And so I don't know if DPS is taking advantage of those opportunities. For example, radio, I believe, could be covered under the Interior's OIA. Infrastructure projects, I don't know if some of your concerns are being shared with the mayor, because every time we get a list from the mayor, it's not on that list. And so I don't know, there might be the lack of communication, or maybe not much support is expressed to the mayor. And so we don't see that in this request. I know recently we appropriated infrastructure project funds, but none was used to address some of the concerns. Some of these fundings, and I'm sure there's still balance in those accounts, we can use to address improvements to your detention center, or maybe even, I think it can be used to purchase equipment. So those are some stuff that we can consider and try to address. But I think the representative here in Rota is Dwayne Martita, who's directly under grants management. And so he would be a great resource to go to try to see if OGM can address some of these concerns through the OA grants office. I understand your concern, and trust me, I've always been an advocate for DPS. We've even calculated hazardous pay as one of the not incentive, but one of the benefits that we can restore, because I understand that was taken away. And so we're trying to look at all these areas in which we can try to support our men and women in blue. It's unfortunate that at least for the current fiscal year, we've been hit hard, in that we were only given the supplemental budget to address current needs. And so because of the time constraints, we felt that it was much easier and more efficient to just give everything to the mayor. And so it would have to be the RDs that would go directly to the mayor to seek funding, at least to help in the current fiscal year. But with that said, thinking of next fiscal year, there are several. We've been receiving reports, and it looks like we might get a supplemental budget. And so this is where we can kind of provide additional funding to many of the critical needs of the department. But in the meantime, I do know that your current budget under personnel still allocates for employees that have already resigned, right? And so at least that's some funding that, because it's already budgeted for next year, once that position has been vacated, you can reallocate those funds to meet your operational needs. I don't know what the status of these particular officers are, but I know, at least looking at the list and based on what I've heard, there's at least 5 officers that have resigned, maybe more, but at least 5 that I know of or are in the process of resigning. And that's close to 100, over 100 grand that, the department can utilize to address fuel as well as um, equipment and stuff like that. Do you know? I know in our past budget hearings there was some discussions in regards to radio by Homeland. Did that ever come down?
So traditionally, the radio system is handled by Homeland, but it was the past couple of years, DFEMS kind of took the lead as far as trying to restore it. However, the units itself assigned to the officers, those break down constantly and have. That was where we were trying to find funding along with DFEMS in regards to getting those type of equipment. But the main system itself was initiated by Homeland, and then I think DFEMS tried to add on to it so that at least we have a way to communicate. Going back to your point in regards to grant funding through TAP and MAP, I believe the past administration had put in several applications, but either they got lost along the way or we just never heard back. In regards to support from the mayor, we've been receiving a ton of support, right? And grant funding through CJ, I'm sorry, Institute Affairs or the Grants Management Office. We recently were able to renovate our building, right? So we didn't want to get greedy and then start asking again. Well, we know the other departments still have more improvements that they need to do. So that's why you kind of see in the past year that we didn't really request for that much. We're just looking to keep our head above water with our requests. In regards to the officers that have resigned or they're in the process of resigning, yes, we could reappropriate those funds and use it for fuel or whatnot. But if you notice, every year we're requesting a large amount for overtime. It's not because we want to work overtime, it's because we have to. Operational needs dictate that I bring in officers for overtime. There's times where we have officers on leave. They may call in sick or they might be out in training, and I have to supplement that shift with additional manpower. That's going to be overtime. There's times where we have municipal functions, state functions that we need to bring in additional manpower. That's what we're using to play around with a little bit in order to fund these overtime costs. Because we're never given, every year that I've been an officer, and I've been in the department going on 24 years. Every year the department will request for a certain amount of funds for overtime. We're rarely ever given it. Where does that money come from then to pay the officers overtime? From vacant positions. So to say that yes, we can reappropriate, yes, we could, but look at the amount of funding for overtime we're requesting, and we're always getting zero. So we got to fund that somehow. And it's not like I can tell my officers, hey, just flex it. You're going to risk your life out there for flex hours. That's not reasonable. You're going to put an officer behind the wheel an extra 8 hours after they worked in their initial 8 for flex. It's not reasonable. We have to fairly compensate our officers.
All right. Does DPS receive any of the compact impact funds? That's normally DPS Central receives. Does the Rota DPS get some of those?
I can't say for sure. If we do, then it's not that huge of an amount.
Does Rota DPS have revolving fund accounts?
We currently only have one through the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. That's what we've been basically living off of the past few months.
And is there funds in that account?
Yes, there currently are funds.
Do you know how much is in there?
I believe it's somewhere around 2,000.
Do you know how much is collected annually?
No, I do not. I don't have those figures. I'm sorry.
All right. I'll yield for now to give other members the opportunity. Recognize Senator Mendiola.
I think I just have one question, really, and this is pertaining to the engine. I think I spoke to one of your officers, and they were talking about there's already a quotation, or there's already a working dollar figure on that. Do you happen to have that? Just on replacement of the engine?
Well, when we had this a year ago, we had a requested for quotation for 2 engines. We did submit that, but like the last house, they said they've been hearing about this engine for 3 budget hearing already, but nothing has been ever. No budget has been allocated to buying purchasing of that engine. The figure that we're looking at for the engine to include, that's the steering, the cables and some other necessity for it. We're looking at probably roughly $50,000 to almost $60,000 for 200 horsepower tuned engine. So that's why we're looking at the figure.
Repair and maintenance. Do you guys get? So I know you say you didn't mention how many vehicles you have down currently, but I'd just like to ask if there's any vehicles currently sitting at a shop for repair that's pending funding.
No, all our vehicles that are inoperable are at DPS compounds.
Like beyond repair?
No, some of them are. Hold on real quick. One terrain, which is assigned to the traffic section, is an emission problem, something to do with its internal combustion. The other one is a coil, and then the other one for patrol is a fuel pump. The Toyota Tacoma, which is probably one of our oldest ones on the fleet, needs an overhaul.
And last question is, and of course you probably don't have this figure right off the top of your head, but it's as far as food for detainees on average, let's say in your 24 years, what is roughly the the amount of detainees you have annually on average? And I'm sure it fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
Some years there's more, some years there's less, but on average, what's ideal?
It fluctuates. So, looking at statistics for the past 5 years, I'd say we average around 9 to 10 a year, where we have to hold them up to, where we have to execute a Rule 5 and sometimes hold them up to 72 hours and transport. So that's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whatever rotation it is when we arrest them, until we're able to get them off the sci-fi.
Thank you. Ayuf, not sure.
Who pays for the detainees to fly the assignment?
Normally, it'll come out of the department's budget, but since we've been in the hole this past year, we've received assistance from the mayor herself, from the commissioner's office as well.
So have you received assistance from corrections?
No, we have not.
Have they ever helped in the past?
They have, but it's not for transporting of arrestees. It's more of the maintenance of the building. They recently supplied us with air conditioning units for that detention facility.
Recognize Senator Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. This 911 phone system, you mentioned, Director, that it goes down at times. How often is that?
We experienced, so in the past 3 months, safely say, we experienced that at least once a week, where it'll go down for anywhere between 5 to sometimes 45 minutes.
So every week.
Every week we've been having that issue, and we have brought up the issue with IT&E, but whenever they come and they check the system, it's reading that it's working fine. There'll be times where the phone unit is on itself and we see it functioning, but then we'll receive a call from Saipan Dispatch that they received a call from 911 that we have a call here in Rota.
Also, you can dial 911 here, it gets answered in
Sometimes,
Saipan.
yes. And the same happens.
But normally
in
it should be
Tinian.
answered on Rota, right?
It should be, yes.
And Saipan commissioner is aware of this situation?
I believe so.
Okay. And also the commissioner in the CNMI is aware of the engine situation?
Yes.
Because right now, if there needs to be someone rescued, so what you have a small engine?
Okay, Senator Mo, I'm sorry, with that, yes, the commissioner was aware a few months ago when he first visited Rota about the situation that we're having with our boat. He did mention that he's gonna try his best to find a way to assist us with getting an engine or getting our engines repaired. This last incident that we had a distress call where we had grounded the vessel due to the last distress that we had went out and one of the engine had a fault engine, so we can no longer respond with that boat. So what happens is, luckily, we have resources from DLNR using their vessels to go and assist us with helping with that distress call. From
So now
there,
you're using DLNR?
DLNR, DFW, the Fish and Wildlife vessel, assist us by going out and assist finding that distressed vessel. The thing is, because the DLNR vessel is not big enough to actually tow a larger vessel than its own. That's why Commissioner, and we're very happy the Commissioner in Saipan had send in one boat for a loaner boat for us, larger than what we have, and they towed our boat to Saipan for repair. But what we told the chief of boating safety there, that even if we repair that engine that we have there, that is existing right now, it's not big enough or strong enough for that size of a vessel. This is why we were requesting for them to actually either purchase a bigger 200 horsepower engine for it, or there's no use for us to have that engine repaired because it's just going to go down anyways. So right now we have one vessel from Saipan that we're using as a loaner until such time they fix that vessel that we have.
Okay. But you're saying that once they fix that and they bring the engine back, it's not even big enough for the boat that you
It's
have
not
there?
strong enough for that vessel that it's on right now.
Oh.
Because
But you were
that
using
engine-
it. But you were using it nonetheless.
You were using it, but there's a lot of times that we had to respond to the distress call, and the vessels that we're trying to tow is actually larger than the vessel we have, and towing it was actually what do you call that? It was a struggle. So what we did was we went out locally and looked for vessels that are larger than that and assist us with that. And we had some vessels here that did assist us in the past in towing larger vessels for us. And
Okay. So the bottom line is we have a loaner now, and there's no
Yes.
concern for emergency now.
there's no concern for emergency right now,
Okay.
sir.
But the radio, the commissioner is aware of the radio situation that you
Yes,
cannot.
that was discussed at our command meeting when he arrived on Rota.
They're aware, and so now your radios are not working. You cannot call from the headquarters to the field.
Radios haven't been working for the better part of 5 years, I think.
For what time?
Also, for 5 years, you haven't had.
It's so when the
How
radios
about
do work,
Saipan? How do they communicate with their?
Saipan has a different radio system compared to us. And for the better part of the last 5 years, our radios have been on and off. They've been more off than they are on, because even when the system is on, we can't transmit at times, or people can receive, but they can't speak on the other end.
Because of the antenna?
It might be an antenna issue. It might be. I'm not certified to answer what the problem is.
So who at DPS would know the concern? I mean, if we want to fix it up, what do we need and what system and all that?
Defense took the lead last year in regards to getting that radio system at least
Also,
functioning.
defense
temporarily.
have their own radio system now?
They kind of took over that system, but even with that, it fluctuates. So the system originally belongs to Homeland, I believe, right? And then Defense came
so
in. And
who can give us, the committee, what we need so that we can address DPS radio and also defense radios?
I believe that would
and-
probably
and-
be Homeland, sir.
So I mean, I'm not saying we have the money, but I want to know what it takes to get all the radios in place and for both departments. So who can give us some kind of numbers and what kind
Senator
of system?
Bo, I think the former director or former resident deputy commissioner Steve Miskin, because I know that I was previously working with him on that system, but we never had the opportunity to take off with that. But I know that he has during that time, he has the information that we need to, should we find fundings to push that operation forward and get the communication up and going for Rota. So I think our best bet is to probably just communicate with
So-
former director Steve Miskin.
Thank you. So if we have that versus now you're using a cell phone, is that a big difference? Is that
It's a faster way of communicating per se, but the coverage itself is also a problem. We don't get coverage on the highways
with the radio?
with the radio. San Paulo, it operates on a different repeater, so sometimes, more often than not, that repeater is down.
So you're saying the cell phone is, if we address the blind spot, the cell phone works better, or?
Well, the issue with the cell phone is we're going to have to dial a number and start communicating that way,
Oh,
right? So
so
that's
just the radio, everybody
Yeah.
hears it, and so there's a big difference then.
yes.
All right. So we'll reach out to Senator Mason. No?
Thank you.
Recognize Senator Mandela.
Just clarifying question. The engine, so we were talking about the engine, and I know he asked some pretty clear questions. So even if DPS fixes this boat and gives it back and you return the loaner boat, it sounds like we're probably going to run into this problem just because the average boat in Rota is larger than the vessel that you guys carry in horsepower wise. So what is the current horsepower of that engine that you guys have on your current boat that's being repaired?
So right now we have a twin of 115. That's a 230 horsepower right now. The engine that we're looking for is a twin 200 horsepower. That would be sufficiently enough to give more power and torque for that vessel to actually tow a vessel. Because we do tow vessels before, but that's the reason why the engines are malfunctioning, because the engine itself is working harder than
It's
because
supposed to
it's
be.
pulling one big boat plus another boat behind it.
Yeah.
So that's where we have an issue with.
Understood.
With the vessel they have here, that's why we're trying to communicate with the commissioner in hopes that if we do get an engine for our vessel.
What size?
I'm sorry?
What size?
200 horsepower, twin 200 horsepower.
That's what you need.
Yeah, that will give that vessel 400 horsepower.
I do have a recommendation, and this is probably something I shouldn't give, but maybe this is something that you guys can work with DFM, Saipan, because they do have a spare engine that's sitting in storage. When we replaced the engine of the boat up in Saipan, we took that engine and stored it. So maybe something that you can work. I'm not sure if it's still there. Don't quote me on that, but maybe another working avenue other than, well, we're trying to find miracle with fundings to try and just procure engine. So just something that I like to offer. That's why I asked about the horsepower, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's two engines, 225 horsepower. I'm not sure if they're using it, or theirs went down and they're using it now, but it's worth a shot. Another follow-on question is the 911 system, and I understand this and this is with DFEMS, right? I know that the issue is depending where you're at in the municipality. If you're up north, sometimes Tinian answers the 911 call. Sometimes, and I know that this is issue even in Saipan, where if you're calling from Corrosion Point, for example, Tinian picks up the 911 call and it takes more time for you to forward that call or tell somebody to hang up and call. So I think it's probably an issue where we have to look at our 911 system and start upgrading it. Unfortunately, it's probably not a popular time just because of funding issue, but it's something that's, I think, really important for us to start looking into. One of the things that I was working on when I was in Homeland, I was working on a legislation to try and push a 911 system, a next generation 911 system that will integrate Saipan, Rota, and Tinian and have that distinction. I know the problem is geographic, right? Like GPS system and all that stuff. So we gotta update our GPS system, make sure that if we plug it into the the program, it recognizes where you're at. And it for me, we're seeing a lot more crimes growing in Saipan, and I'm sure likewise in Rota. I think it's something that we need to look into. Unfortunately, we just got to get through this budget season and just hopefully we can stay afloat for the next fiscal year. But just wanted to point that out for the record. Thank you, Ayuf.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. Going back to the boats, didn't we have a Zodiac, right? Or similar to a Zodiac? Is that?
Yes, we do have a Zodiac before the tornado, the one that we have recently, the new one. We had one, but because of the damage on the tubing that we had sent that to Saipan for repair. When we went to Saipan, I wasn't fed so much information as to the whereabouts of the vessel right now, but that's why they recently purchased. We had another Zodiac until our new vessel was purchased. So as soon as we got the new vessel in, they send their the loaner back to Saipan. But with the Zodiac that we have, I'm not really sure as to where is that right now. I'm hearing different informations, but it's not to the clarity of it.
Who coordinated that?
The past administration, former Commissioner Robert Guerrero, sir.
So our Zodiac is somewhere in Saipan. Nobody knows where.
Somewhere. I am not. Don't quote me. I'm not sure what happened.
Do you
to
know
them.
where?
We're still asking about it.
I think it's probably in Tinian.
But was the repair that was needed to that? Was that something minor that would?
Well, the last information that I know that the tubing itself to repair that's about roughly $22,000 to $25,000 for just the tubing. So they
What
had
about
sent
the
it-
engines on those?
That's when they purchased the tornado, the 28-footer tornado that we have. What they did was they took the engine from that vessel and put it in tornado and brought it over. So we're actually using that old engine on the new vessel.
So the new vessel, that's not from Fish and Wildlife before?
No, sir. That was from our old Zodiac vessel. That was
The
sent
engine,
over,
yeah, but the
yes.
boat itself, the boat itself, it wasn't
Yeah,
from.
that's the one. That was new. Yes.
And how was that purchased? You know?
Maybe I'm not really familiar as to how that purchased, but I know it was coming up from Saipan, sir.
Do you know? I forget the grant program, but it was part of the investigations last term. The under boating safety, the grant that they get. That
RBS.
yeah, RBS. Do we have any equipments from RBS or Yeah.
We do have some equipment from RBS. Yes.
any of the boat? Is the boat from RBS,
I know the Zodiac was from the RBS.
but not the new one?
No, I'm not sure about the new one if it came up from RBS.
Do you know if RBS can purchase engines?
Yes, I think.
And
So right now, that's where the commissioner is trying to find how to assist us with purchasing of a new engine. But even with that, it's just not a concrete statement for me. What they told us is that we're gonna try.
when the RBS was used to purchase a Zodiac, who paid for the maintenance and fuel for the Zodiac? Was it through the RBS or local funds?
Mostly some are from local funds, I guess.
Okay. You know who's the head of RBS currently?
I think the one that's handling the grant for RBS, I know it's Vanessa or something.
So no discussions with
I know,
RVS as to getting a new engine, or
well, we
even
had,
even as simple as getting fuel from them to help
okay,
with
with the fuel, we do have, recently they had assist us with giving us $2,000 fuel for boating safety down here for whenever they do response, and for only for the two vehicles that we have under the boating safety.
Okay. Members, anything else? All right. I guess just in closing, I know every budget hearing, there always be a passionate plea for funding assistance, and DPS has always been short funded, but every time there's some funds that are realized, we try to, as much as possible, address some of the operational needs. As I mentioned earlier, OIA and OGM is a great resource for a lot of the um, uh, whether it be capital items or even operational needs in order to preserve and protect our safety. And so they are, they can include a lot of these requests in their OIA grant. And so I hope that if future requests through OGM or OIA is unsuccessful, then we can try to address some of the needs through local funding, especially when it is to address infrastructure needs. And some of those infrastructure needs could include equipment and stuff like that.
Can I just ask your department to provide us, at least my office, with communications that you had with anyone, any office or any company regarding issues with your 911 or with your radio, and how it's putting our people at risk? I appreciate, because one of the discussions we had with the broadband special assistant was the blind spot on the islands around Rota. And as you know, the telecommunication law, when it was first passed, has it that all the islands should have uniform service. And it's been almost 2 decades that we've been letting them go with these blind spots. But now that, over the years, they should already be upgrading their cell service antenna. So I'm going to use those documents. If you have any letters regarding your 911, your radio communication system, I appreciate if you can provide copies of those, if they can be public document. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that up, Senator Paul. Did you guys attend any presentation by, I think, at the broadband office? They were just here recently, last week. I think that's Hunter. What's this? Yeah. Mr. Hunter is in charge of he's a special assistant for broadband, and hopefully that's also something that could be included in the request.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to attend. We had an in-service training that we were conducting with some of our officers.
Okay.
That was last week. This week, we're currently doing firearms recertification.
Okay.
So I'm glad the chairman brought that up, because I was at that meeting Friday at Labor, and I think they're going to be coming up. One of the I guess report that they're going to come up with is on the mapping where the island of Rota would require fiber optic. So it's important that you meet with them and bring up also, Sabana, you're patrolling Sabana and the antennas up there, and I guess the communication system in general. Of course, the main goal is to provide every citizen access to fiber optic, but they also look at considerations of the public service and safety. So I think it would be wise to reach out to Mr. Glenn Hunter, who is the special assistant for broadband in the CNMI, and there is a lot of federal monies there involved that we can possibly tap. And since this is also being recorded publicly, uh, he's happy to report that now it's $30, but maybe in a month or two, it's going to be $75 assistance to all the people out there that wants to connect to a Wi-Fi service. So you just apply online, you get a letter, you take that letter to ITNE or Docomo, and you get $75 discount maybe in a month or two for those that are qualified. Of course, there are qualifications there, but I think for the people of Rota, maybe 80% of them are meet one of those criteria listed to qualify. Just want to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. And so at this time, we'd just like to thank you both for your presence here today and for bringing up the concerns that we will share with the rest of the members. If there's anything else that we missed, please feel free to reach out to any of our offices. Additionally, if there are any requests that you feel is not covered in the budget and that you would like for at least the delegation to consider using other local funds, and if you can share a detailed list of those items that we can slowly start purchasing, that's something that we can try to help assist. And so at this time, we'd like to thank you again, and you are hereby excused. Thank you. I know. All right, I'd like to invite Ms. Kirigwa, Ms. Kirigwa Manglonia to join us. Sorry, I know earlier I mentioned defense will be tomorrow, but since they're here, we'll close out with defense right after commerce.
Thank you, honorable members of Senate, especially Chairman Donald Manglonia, Senator Paul, and Senator Dennis.
Thank you.
It's been 4 hours of cry for help. I need to invoke my Creator, the Holy Spirit, to help me. To be filled with His Spirit that He promised us in Galatians, filled with the spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I invite you, members of this astute body, and every individual that is witnessing this beautiful moment, the breath of life that God gave us to continue to address issues in our community. From the dawn of time, we were given a book to refer unashamed for guidance from our Creator. And I want to read to you the book of Psalms 34. And I ask you to take it with you and ponder on it and ask God for help. And I begin. I will praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak His praises. I will boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. I prayed to the Lord, and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. In my desperation, I prayed, and the Lord listened. He saved me from all my troubles. For the angel of the Lord is a guard. He surrounds and defends all who fear him. Taste and see the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you, his godly people. For those who fear him will have all they need. Even strong young lions sometimes go hungry. But those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. Come, my children, and listen to me, and I will teach you the Lord. Does anyone want to live a life that is long and prosperous? Then keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right. His ears are open to their cries for help. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. He will erase their memory from the earth. The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. For the Lord protects the bones of the righteous, not one of them is broken. Calamity will surely destroy the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be punished. But the Lord will redeem those who serve him. No one who takes refuge in him will be condemned. I thank you for your time, your patience, and your attention. In hearing us, plea for help. And only promising us help to the best of your ability and authority. So I pray for God to help us in this financial calamity we are in. I pray for a miracle. And I bring you to Matthew 18:20. For when 2 or 3 are gathered, praying in the name of Jesus Christ, agreeing with the prayer, that he will rescue us. Amen. Thank you again for allowing me, because that's where, just like when your cell phone is out of battery, I personally, when I'm charged with negative, I seek.
No,
Thank
Agi,
you.
that's a very beautiful prayer. And Mr. Chairman, maybe that's an omen that we should end today's hearing with that and continue tomorrow. But we really appreciate that's a good way to end the day, maybe. And no, if there's no objection, we can start tomorrow again. Hello, what time do we start tomorrow? I feel like I don't wanna. I think that we need miracle now. You know, no, I mean seriously, we appreciate the
Yes.
prayers. So I think the day already is the 5 some night, so we can come back in the morning and pick up. No, we just have commerce and then finance That's it, right? And DPW, we can do it tomorrow. We can finish in 2 hours, everybody. It's not, bonito i-prayer, it's not, but meeting talo na. Oh, no, you'll be the first one tomorrow, no? Or you wanna?
It's going to be quick.
Okay,
My request will be quick. I promise you. I promise you.
Thank you for your spiritual words. Acting RD, are you acting? Are you the current acting?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Sorry, before we proceed, Chief Ogo, we truly apologize. I know that you've also been sitting here, but I feel like defense at this point might be a longer hearing that we may end up being here longer than we anticipated. And so if we can, we'll go ahead and excuse you today, and then you'll be up first tomorrow, and we'll resume at 10 a.m. Thank you. Please extend our apologies to the Deputy Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you again, RD Kitawa Manglonia. Just a brief explanation. Commerce requested a budget of 228,000 for personnel, but was only given 148,000. They requested for 8 FTEs, and so their operational expense is very minimal, with the exception of 25,000 for improvements. And so, just briefly, can you explain what these the need for these 4 additional FTEs?
Okay. 4 additional FTEs. As you know, the Department of Commerce is run by 1 director, 1 administrative officer, 1 enforcement officer, and 1 statistics. The Department of Commerce has 8 divisions here on Rota. And we do provide services for the 8 divisions. It might not be as big as Saipan, but we do. So I am the only administrative personnel there.
And so, what are these position titles?
So the
that you're looking
position
for?
titles that we have, that we are requesting, we recently we have these vacant positions, statistical technician, but there's no money. We advertise it twice, but no applicant. So we are asking for new positions: an administrative assistant, ABTC law enforcement officer trainee, and enforcement and compliance trainee. I've been in the system for almost 30 years. I need the younger generation to come in and be trained. That is why we're asking. The next generation, we have to prepare them. I don't know if I'll make it for the next 5 years. So I need, please, I'm begging you, give us. And we are only asking the minimal salary based on the salary scale.
Okay.
So,
at any point, or in your experience, what was the most that the division has employed?
we used to have, with the help of mayor's office, right, and council, we used to have maybe like 8 to 10 employees. MOUs. But when administration terms ends,
So does the MOU.
so does the MOU.
Okay.
What are the positions for the MOU? I'm just curious.
Well, if I go back years, there were positions like bless their souls, they've gone from this place, but they were placed for marketing, for assisting in, what do you call this?
ABC.
Yes, there was one in ABC, one for weights and measure. And then also there were a couple of them that was given to us to assist us to do the Chamorro Village. I don't know if you remember that it was a mayor's project where those huts were erected. So we were given individuals from the mayor's office to join us to make that happen. And then we used to have business advisors. There was a point in time where we had to restructure a salary for a business advisor because our enforcement officer was budgeted out of Saipan. And when Saipan Saipan called us and said, you have 2 weeks, send the guy back because he is from our budget. We had to do what we needed to do at the time. Break that FTE for the business advisor and assume that individual because he had a family. So, commerce, like I said, I've been there. We have worked creatively to keep the service going. And I plead the same plea with the rest of the departments. Critical, FTEs, communication, fuel. Little bit of operation. So I know the situation because it's out in media. I don't need to waste time. Please, I plea again, do help us to the best of your ability and authority. Thank you.
I'm just curious as to your staffing because I know that there's a lot of programs at Department of Commerce, and I don't know if that's reaching out here because like there in some division that you don't have a person out here. And for example, I don't know whether we're pursuing that program for right? I mean, there's a federal program, I believe, that has money and assistance to entrepreneurs here that want to produce something from locally. So I'm just wondering whether those programs from the central department are reaching out here, and whether you have people, for example, to assist or young entrepreneurs in various dreams that they have. So I'm just concerned whether is there somebody in your office that works with the department up there that handles all the various programs that they have.
Mr. Senator, I know that the management has just been turned over, new management. So I reserve to answer that question only because I am not aware of any information really as to, but like I told you, the department, I'm the administrative officer. I do service for workman's compensation, for statistics, for ABTC, for banking and insurance, and the rest of whatever program. So we work well with the Secretary of Commerce and the division directors. And so when they have those programs made available to us, we are here and we assist them. That's all I can tell you as far as my part as an administrative. At the moment, it's showing 5: resident director, the administrative officer, ABTC enforcer, statistics specialist, and the vacant statistics technician. Technician, yes. That's the fifth. So resident department head, admin officer, ABTC enforcement officer, statistics specialist, and statistics technician. That's the vacant.
Recognize Senator Maniola.
Just probably two questions, Ms. Aggie, or Ms. Mangonia, acting director. So I'm looking at all others here. It's showing 1,211. Like, seems like an exact number. So I'm just kind of curious if there's something that's you're requesting 1,211 for specific day or O or something that you're, or it's just this something that you guys are requesting.
That 1,211 is just for operations to help us.
Okay.
I don't know if you are aware that we do have a revolving fund.
What do you? So should I ask? Revolving fund.
Well, I'm gonna share with you that revolving fund at the moment, the figures that you are seeing there, is saying it's for Rota. But when we try to address requests, needs, we are locked with the issue of when Munis came in, that all collection from Saipan, Tinian, and Rota are put into that until such time that they identify really how much Rota collected, how much Tinian collected. That's when we can.
And I know that, and I understand that clearly, and I made that statement earlier that revolving funds, I see that the governor is always pushing for us to utilize revolving funds, and I made the statement that revolving funds is subject to central government really based on collection and disbursement. So in other words, we can look at revolving funds and it's showing that we have $8,000, but until the secretary or the commissioner for that matter releases that fund to the municipality, you can't spend it. But does that, so let me ask, does the number reflect on that revolving fund, or
Which one?
on that revolving funds that you just stated earlier for commerce? Is there a number, or are you just know there's a revolving fund?
There is, and
Okay.
there is. There's more. You can have access and do research on that, right?
Okay.
And if you have any questions as far as Rota, please, the door is always open. You have our phone numbers, our emails. Pay a visit to us.
Outstanding. Last one, improvements. It's showing 25,000 here. Any specific improvement that you guys are working on or propose to work on?
I really need a miracle improvements. We're asking improvements because at the present time we are very happy from the previous administration that we are finally over with our Magellan trip. Commerce have been traveling from one office to the other. Now we're finally there at the school. We were afforded 2 classrooms. 1 classroom, we are using it now, utilizing it as supposedly Rota Business Incubator Center, where you, Senator Poe, attended the broadband. And the other room, that's where department and public services are performed. And so we are there, but we've been there for 2 years, 3 years. I have to go to the neighbor to use the toilet.
So it's basically for kind of improvement and
To improve
the facility.
Yes, so that we could have a working toilet facility, because Department of Commerce still borrows
the neighbor.
that need from labor, from DLNR, from DCCA. Please.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me, Mr. Chair. Are you for now?
Thank you, Senator Mandela. Do you know how much is in that revolving fund right now?
The last time I opened it, it was under my access is 86 or 88 grand. There's a separation of 56, and then there's a 31 added to that 88, right? And I know you can see that. Yes. I was able to
Enter invoices.
yes, I was able to access that fund to pay our phone, or else I would be part of these departments who were cut communication, thanks to that revolving fund. But there's other important purchases that I wanted it to make, such as a printer and the supplies of print ink, and I have not been able to get approval on that, only because we need to identify how much Rota really has, how much of that 88 or 86 belongs to Rota. Because I understand the Director of Finance is concerned. If we spend beyond that, we're going to end up liable, paying back because we spend, and I don't want to do that. It's enough that 8 hours minus our salary. I don't want to take that chance to put myself in a position to end up in the jailbird.
So when you entered the invoice for your phone, it got paid off.
Well, yes, it was.
But when you
accepted.
enter the invoice for like printer, it's being rejected? Or?
Right now, it was rejected. It was rejected for admit. And I want to shift the focus again. I want to shift the discussion to, please, I plea. I've been in the system for almost 30 years. I have never had any formal training how to prepare a budget. It's just shoot, because, we try our best. And I'm begging, please, department heads and administrative, please let there be a standard operating procedure that they be trained annually. Because I feel this budget year request, I feel so dumbfounded, especially with the munis in place. Don't get me wrong, I love the munis because accountability is there. But we need to be trained properly in order for us to perform accordingly.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your concerns.
Thank you.
What's the exact name of the revolving fund account?
The revolving fund?
Yeah.
It's 1959B, and it's ABTC.
The
alcohol.
fees.
Yeah, alcohol.
So you're not
filing
sure
fees.
if this is a CNMI balance or just a Rota balance?
It is everything that's collected, supposedly, in the before munis, right? So 1959A is Saipan collection. 1959B is Rota collection.
Right.
1959C is Tinian. But with this munis, what happened in the munis is apparently all the collections is dumped into 1959B. And 1959B is strictly for Rota prior to munis.
Okay.
So there has to be, I beg. Huh? Yes, but like I said, I don't want to end up in the jailhouse, because even if I see, when we had the meeting, oh, you have 290,000. I said, excuse me. Yes, I can see that. But I know how much I collect. That doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
You guys have to do your job and fix it up.
Okay.
And let us know. But, like I said, Acting Secretary of Commerce Rios, when he first got appointed, the first thing he did was he contacted us. And he was the one that advised us to look into that. And then now acting secretary Frank Cabrera, we also had already virtual meeting, and he's very willing. So I beg that please have us trained, you know.
Okay. Thank you. We'll
Thank
share your
you.
concerns with OMB and Department of Finance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your patience today, and again for your spiritual guidance and for sharing with the committee the concerns of Department of Commerce as acting resident director. We'll get clarification on your revolving funds and your training opportunities. And if there's anything else that was not brought up today, please feel free to reach out to any of the members.
One more before I leave, because I remember my director, Rodney James. He asked me, please, Ms. Aggie, can you remind them that we asked 50,000 for a car, a vehicle, if you see that there? We need a vehicle to help us with our enforcement at the same time, to help us, because we collect data. We go out at times to do surveys at the farm. And in fact, next week, the representative from the states for agricultural census will be coming on August 21 to Rota to have first hand. So we have, right at the moment, we have vehicles that,
So not a Hyundai accent.
no, please, the Hyundai
What you have
accent
right
right now. Luckily, one of the attendees told us that please go outside and check because your brake light turned on. I just picked it up from the shop.
Oh.
So we need, I know it's a luxury, the 4x4, but it's a necessity.
Yeah.
We won't be asking if we don't need.
Yeah. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And again, thank you
And
for your
continue
patience.
to do good.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Aguila.
Good.
All right, members, at this time, we will shift. Defense, DPW, and finance, yes. We will recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow. All right. All right. Anything else members want to add before we recess? All right. If none, thank you all for your time. Recess again until tomorrow, 10 a.m.